summary description of this chapter by Srila Prabhupada. I will read that first. This chapter describes how Lord Ramachandra resided in Ayodhya with his younger brothers and performed various sacrifices. Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, performed various sacrifices by which to worship himself, and at the end of these sacrifices he gave land to the Hota, Advaryu, Udgata and Brahma priests. He gave them the eastern, western, northern and southern directions respectively, and the balance he gave to the Acharya. Lord Ramachandra's faith in the Brahmanas and affection for his servants was observed by all the Brahmanas, who then offered their prayers to the Lord and returned whatever they had taken from him. They regarded the enlightenment given to them by the Lord within the core of their hearts as a sufficient contribution. Lord Ramachandra subsequently dressed himself like an ordinary person and began wandering within the capital to understand what impression the citizens had of him. By chance, one night he heard a man talking to his wife who had gone to another man's house. In the course of rebuking his wife, the man spoke suspiciously of the character of Sita Devi. The Lord immediately returned home, and fearing such rumors, he superficially decided to give up Sita Devi's company. Thus he banished Sita Devi, who was pregnant, to the shelter of Valmiki Muni, where she gave birth to twin sons named Lava and Kusha. In Ayodhya, Lakshmana begot two sons named Angada and Chitraketu. Bharata begot two sons named Taksha and Pushkala, and Shatrughna begot two sons named Subahu and Shrutasena. When Bharata went out to conquer various lands on behalf of the emperor, Lord Ramachandra, he fought many millions of Gandharvas. By killing them in the fight, he acquired immense wealth, which he then brought home. Shatrughna killed a demon named Lavana at Madhuvana and thus established the capital of Mathura. Meanwhile, Sita Devi placed her two sons in the care of Valmiki Muni and then entered into the earth. Upon hearing of this, Lord Ramachandra was very much aggrieved, and thus he performed sacrifices for 13,000 years. After describing the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra's disappearance and establishing that the Lord appears for his pastimes only, Shukadeva Goswami ends this chapter by describing the results of hearing about the activities of Lord Ramachandra and describing how the Lord protected his citizens and displayed affection for his brothers. Thus ends the summary. Text number 1. Shri Shuka Uvacha Bhagavan Atmana Atmanam Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Ramaha Uttama Kalpakaihi Rama Uttama Kalpakaihi Sarvadevamayam Devam Sarvadevamayam Devam Ije Atha Acharyavan Makaihi Ijeta Acharyavan Makaihi. Shri Shuka Uvacha Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Rama Uttama Kalpakaihi Sarvadevamayam Devam Ijeta Acharyavan Makaihi. Shri Shuka Uvacha Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Rama Uttama Kalpakaihi Sarvadevamayam Devam Ijetaacharyavan Makaihi. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Atmana, by himself, Atmanam, himself, Ramaha, Lord Ramachandra, Uttama Kalpakaihi, with very opulent paraphernalia, Sarvadevamayam, the heart and soul of all the demigods, Devam, the Supreme Lord himself, Ije, worshipped, Atha, thus, Acharyavan, under the guidance of an Acharya, Makaihi, by performing sacrifices. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Bhayacharana Arvinda, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami said, thereafter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra, accepted an Acharya and performed sacrifices, yajnas, with opulent paraphernalia. Thus he himself worshipped himself, for he is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. Kindly repeat the translation. Shukadeva Goswami said, thereafter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra, accepted an Acharya and performed sacrifices, yajnas, with opulent paraphernalia. Thus, he himself worshipped himself, for he is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. Purport. Sarvarhanam Achyutejya. If Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is worshipped, then everyone is worshipped, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 4.31.14. Prabhupada ki jai. Yatha Thorormula Nishechanena Tripyanti Tatskanda Bhujopashakha Pranopaharacha Yatendriyanam Tataiva Sarvarhanam Achyutejya. As pouring water on the root of a tree nourishes the trunk, branches, twigs and leaves, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead satisfies the demigods who are part of that Supreme Personality. Performing yajna involves worshipping the Supreme Lord. Here the Supreme Lord worshipped the Supreme Lord. Therefore it is said, Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Ije. The Lord worshipped himself by himself. This does not, of course, justify the Mayavada philosophy by which one thinks himself the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Jiva, the living entity, is always different from the Supreme Lord. The living entities, Vibhinnamsha, never become one with the Lord, although Mayavadis sometimes imitate the Lord's worship of himself. Lord Krishna meditated upon himself every morning as a grihastha, and similarly, Lord Ramachandra performed yajnas to satisfy himself. But this does not mean that an ordinary living being should imitate the Lord by accepting the process of ahangraha upasana. Such unauthorized worship is not recommended herein. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport and translation to Canto 9, Chapter 11, text number 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here Shukadeva Goswami is going to describe the ruling of Lord Ramachandra and the ideal standards he had set for the ruler. So he is here describing about how Lord Ramachandra worshipped himself by performing sacrifices with opulent paraphernalia. Bhagavan Atmana Atmanam Ramaha. So Lord Rama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, Atmana, Atmanam, EJ, he worshipped himself by performing yajnas, Uttama Kalpakaihi, with opulent paraphernalia. So why did he worship himself? It is described here, Sarva Devamayam Devam. He worshipped himself because he is the supreme lord of all the devatas. So what does this indicate? He is the supreme worshipable object in all the three worlds. Nobody more superior than him. Therefore he is worshipable. All worshipable. And because there is no superior object of worship than himself, obviously if the Lord has to worship somebody, it cannot be other than himself. Therefore Prabhupada cautions in the purport, this does not mean that we worship ourselves. Because the Mayavadis, they use the logic that we are also God, we are also spirit, Brahman, the Lord is also Brahman. So when the Lord is worshipping himself here, that means we should also worship ourselves. No. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Brahman. We are Brahman, but a tiny Brahman. We are not the complete Brahman or the Para Brahman. So being the part, we cannot imitate the whole. We are not the whole. So when the Lord is worshipping himself, he is meaning that the tiny part and parcels should worship him. That is natural. The part serves the whole. It is natural. Like Prabhupada always gave the example that the fingers, the hand is my part and parcel, and it is meant to serve me, the whole. Similarly, a servant in an organization serves his master. A son or a child or children are expected to serve parents. The devotee is expected to serve the Lord. So all living entities being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord or the children of God, the Supreme Parent, is naturally expected to worship Him. So this is a very important point. So therefore, ahangraha upasana does not mean that one worships oneself like the Supreme Lord worships himself. That is wrong understanding. That is called Mayavada philosophy. And that is condemned in the scriptures. So, we are Chuta and the Lord is Achyuta. Somebody who has to be worshipable must be completely free of all vices. Then he becomes worshipable. So the criterion for being worshipped is you have to be completely free from all vices. The Lord is completely free from all vices. And the Acharya, who is also free from all vices, becomes worshipable. But not because he is on par with the Supreme Lord, but because he represents the Supreme Lord as a perfect representative. That's why we say in the early morning prayers in our temple, Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastrair Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadbihi. The spiritual master is worshipped as good as Hari. Why? Kimtu Prabhorya Priya Evatasya. Because he is the most confidential servant of the Lord. So Prabhupada gives a nice example. Just like Viceroy. Viceroy means in place of the royal king. So, or we say vice president. There's a president and there's a vice president. So, sometimes the president is expected to represent the country when he goes for a meeting outside his own country. And this president or the prime minister is offered great honor and respect by the receiving country, the hosting country. Sometimes the president of the country or the prime minister is not able to attend that meeting. So he sends his representative. So that representative is given all the honor due the president or the prime minister. Not because he is the president or the prime minister, but he is representing the president or the prime minister. So exactly like that, the spiritual master, the Acharya Deva, is worshipped as good as the Supreme Lord because he is representing the Supreme Lord and his teachings, and is delivering us the Supreme Lord. So for this great service, we are honoring the spiritual master in the form of offering worshipable paraphernalia. So only the Supreme Lord and the Acharya is worshipable, and because both are in the position of Achyuta. Achyuta means one who never falls down to material conditions, one who is infallible, one who is never affected by the three modes of material nature or the three gunas, one who is never bound by, affected by karma. So such a person is worshipable. Therefore the Acharya is worshipable. In fact, Srila Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Instruction that even though a neophyte devotee can accept a Madhyama Adhikari as a spiritual master, but he will not make sufficient progress under his insufficient guidance. As the very word Madhyama indicates, there are three levels of devotees: Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. Kanishta means a beginner in devotional service. Madhyama means he is midway. He is not a neophyte devotee. He is somewhere midway in his devotional service, devotional understanding, and devotional realizations. And Uttama means the best, one who is a Paramahamsa, the pure devotee of the Lord. There are many synonyms. He is also called Mahabhagavata, Paramahamsa, Uttamadhikari, who is 100% Krishna conscious devotee. So, Rupa Goswami continues saying, it is best to accept initiation from the Uttamadhikari. So, this is also clarified by Rupa Goswami. So, it is very simple to understand. Prabhupada, one lecture, he explains, if the teacher or the lecturer himself is BSc in mathematics, and then if the student goes beyond BSc and is wanting to pursue MSc in mathematics or a PhD in mathematics, how can the BSc lecturer guide him? Not possible. So similarly, although a Mathematikari can give initiation, but his guidance will be insufficient because he himself is insufficient in devotional service and realization. So we should therefore accept Uttamadhikari as our spiritual master. So Prabhupada never taught us that a spiritual master can fall down or can succumb to Maya's influences. He never taught us this kind of standard. Spiritual master, there's nothing like good guru and bad guru. One place Prabhupada explains in a conversation, there's nothing like good guru and bad guru. Guru is always good. Just like God is always good, so God's representative, the Son of God, the Acharya Deva, is always good. So, therefore, he is placed in the altar because in the altar all the personalities are worshipable. They are all liberated souls, Nitya Siddhas. So, one place Prabhupada says, actually the Acharya generally comes from Goloka Vrindavana. And he is deputed by the Lord, selected by the Lord and sent to this world on deputation. Imagine if Krishna is selecting somebody, whom will he select? Nothing less than him to represent him. So such is the standard of the Acharya whom we are worshipping. So that's why Krishna also, as this word indicates here, there is a verse, this line indicates, Sarva Deva Mayam Devam. The Lord is the original Guru, therefore he is worshipable. He is also the Supreme Lord and the original Guru. He is worshipable. Similarly, the spiritual master is worshipable because he is on par with the Lord. And the Lord has selected him. Therefore, Krishna says to Uddhava in his instructions, don't become envious of the spiritual master, thinking him to be an ordinary human being like us. Like recently also we heard Prabhupada explaining, there was a Vyasasana for Prabhupada, but Prabhupada was sitting on the floor when some reporters had come to interview him and ask some questions. So then the reporters asked why you are traveling in opulent cars and having big seating arrangement for yourself, big honor. So Prabhupada said, that is why I am sitting down, because you are envious of me. Like that. Because we think that the Acharya is one conditioned soul like us. So why is he given so much honor? So when you consider the Acharya as an ordinary person, naturally envy will set in. Similarly, when Krishna or Rama is accepted as an ordinary person, people don't accept Lord Krishna and Rama as Swayam, as Bhagavan. Because they're envious. They think that they're ordinary human beings. Why are they given such high honor and position? That's why Shukadeva Goswami says in the first canto, actually the most difficult incarnations of all incarnations to be understood is the Lord's incarnation as a human being. Most difficult to understand. Most confusing, bewildering, and misleading. So we take it confirmly that he is a human being when he comes as a human being out of his kind mercy. So Krishna and Rama, these two incarnations are very misleading, apparently. So that is why we should refer Shastra to understand the symptoms of Bhagavan, the characteristic features of Bhagavan and the Acharya. So here, we see here, in order to stress the importance of the Acharya, Lord Ramachandra accepted an Acharya and under his guidance he performed sacrifices. So I was trying to say earlier that even Lord Krishna stressed the importance of the Acharya and cautioned us not to accept him as an ordinary person in his instructions to Uddhava. So Lord Krishna said, Acharyavan Mam Vijaniyan Na Avamanyeta Karhichit Yepi Abhyasuyeta Sarva Devo Mayo Guruhu. So Lord Krishna told Uddhava that Acharyavan Mam Vijaniyan. You should know that Acharya is myself, as good as me. Mam Vijaniyan, as good as me. So through Uddhava actually is instructing all of us. Na avamanyeta karhichit. And at any point of time, he cannot be disrespected. Must not be disrespected. Na avamanyeta karhichit. You should not dishonor him, disrespect him, disregard him. No, that is not allowed. Yepi abhyasuyeta. You should not become envious of the Acharya. Na abhyasuyeta. Don't become envious of the Acharya. Why is he honored specially? Why is he worshipped specially? After all, he is an ordinary person. No. Therefore, he said, don't become envious of the spiritual master. In fact, Sarva Deva Mayo Guruhu. The spiritual master is situated in such a position that he is qualified to instruct all the 33 crore devatas. He is the spiritual master of all the 33 crore devatas also. He is qualified so. Then what are we, ordinary persons in this world, conditioned souls, when even devatas can receive instructions from this Acharya? What about us? That is why Prabhupada said, one should not correct the spiritual master. One should not find faults with the spiritual master. One should not advise the spiritual master. Recently I read that. Prabhupada says, even if you apparently find a mistake in the spiritual master, you should not correct him, nor advise him. No, please do like this, not like this. No, that is an offense. Many times we see when we become offensive to Guru and Vaishnavas particularly, then we lose our Krishna conscious sense and intelligence and start and our consciousness becomes bewildered and materialistic, that we start observing the Vaishnava and the Acharya from a materialistic perspective, from material perspective. At that point, we start committing offenses. If you read Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami says, 2 days back we were reading In the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami saying, one who decorates his body with tilaka and wears kantimala, they're supposed to be devotees of Vishnu in this world. And wherever they stay, they sanctify the place. And wherever they move, they sanctify such places. So this is the kind of understanding of a Vaishnava. Especially true of the Acharya, the spiritual master. And when he is worshipped on par with the Lord in the altar. So how can we become audacious and try to even advise or instruct the spiritual master? Or make comments or remarks. Oh, this is not correct, that is not correct. What the spiritual master or the Acharya said. No, it's completely wrong. That means the devotee is in Maya. Like we see in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was quoting from whatever arguments Arjuna has presented as to why he does not want to fight the battle was all in line with the Vedic perspective, not wrong. But there are lower and higher lessons, lower and higher Vedic perspectives, which Arjuna didn't understand. There are social codes, there are moral codes, there are spiritual codes. Actually, Prabhupada says that, marks that point in the one of the purports. The soul is more important than the body. And the Supreme Lord's instructions are more important than the instructions given in the Vedas. Because Vedas has instructions for all categories of people. Just like if you go to the college, right from kindergarten up to degree, the courses are available. Similarly, Vedas provide a spectrum of complete wide spectrum of knowledge and instructions, lower, medium and higher. So when Krishna, the master of all knowledge himself, is there to guide Arjuna, he did not have to worry about what is good and what is bad, what is dharma and what is adharma. He just got to execute the instruction of Krishna. That's all. So coming back to the verse here, Lord Ramachandra accepted an Acharya is very significant. So Prabhupada explains the purport that under the guidance of the Acharya, he worshipped himself with opulent paraphernalia. Similarly, we see Lord Krishna also meditated upon himself. So Lord Ramachandra accepted an Acharya, Lord Krishna accepted an Acharya, Lord Brahma accepted an Acharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted an Acharya, Ishwar Puri, Narad Muni, Vedavyas, who wrote all the Vedas, also accepted an Acharya. Therefore, it is imperative that we accept an Acharya and take his shelter to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So there is no choice if you want to make serious advancement in spiritual life. Then there is no choice. One has to take shelter of an Acharya and offer himself to become his disciple. Actually, to Rupa Goswami says, spiritual life begins, if you see, there are 64 principles of devotional service, and the very first five principles begin with our connection with the spiritual master or the Vaishnava. Otherwise our spiritual life does not even begin, technically speaking. Maybe out of sentiment, we may be practicing bhakti or wanting to render service to Krishna, but officially or seriously our spiritual life doesn't begin without accepting shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So Rupa Goswami mentions the first 5 principles of devotional service. Interestingly, you must be thinking the 64 ways of serving Krishna. In 64 ways of serving Krishna, you must be thinking as it begins, they must be more important, right? So the first 5 principles is connected with the Guru, not Krishna. The first one, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. Maybe the second is serving Krishna? No. Becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. See, it is becoming initiated and learn how to do seva to Krishna. Okay, out of ignorance, out of innocence, just like in India, typically pious Hindus, we're all pious Hindus, so we worship God, Rama, Krishna. Lord accepts it. Not that Lord doesn't accept. But if it matures to a certain state at one point of time in your life, the Lord who is within you will instruct you, please go to the Acharya and learn from him in a proper way how to serve me. One day he will inspire that sincere devotee. So learn how to discharge devotional service from him. Okay, third one is serving Krishna. No. Obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. The fourth one is serving Krishna. No. Following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of spiritual master. See, this is another important point. Following the footsteps of great acharyas, but under the direction of the spiritual master. That means we may have Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baldev Vidya Bhushan's commentaries, Sridhara Swami's commentaries, Madhvacharya's, Ramanujacharya's commentaries on Bhagavatam, on Vedas. But one should learn them from our spiritual master. And Prabhupada said, I have given all those teachings in my books. Prabhupada used to have about, if I'm right, about 6 to 7 commentaries before he wrote his Bhagavatam. Sridhara Swami's commentary, then Madhvacharya's, Sripad Ramanujacharya's, then Veeraragavacharya's, then Baldev Vidya Bhushan, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, all these commentaries he used to keep in front of him and then online dictate Bhaktivedanta translations and purports. So we should not feel at any point of time that we are missing out the essence of the teachings of the other acharyas. Everything is presented by Prabhupada. All their teachings in essence, in its condensed and essence form, is there in Prabhupada's teachings. Just that we have to go more deep into the teachings of Prabhupada. Then actually the door to those gems and treasures of the other bona fide acharyas' teachings will be revealed. Actually, it is already revealed by Prabhupada. We are able to appreciate that. But this much we should be rest assured. Like recently we read the pastime, one interesting pastime about Prabhupada. Very interesting and very revealing. There was one well-known devotee by name Atma Tattva Prabhu. Most of the ISKCON devotees know about him. So when he is one of the big book distributors in ISKCON, had been, and so he was doing book distribution on the streets, and he happened to come across a person whom he was trying to sell the Krishna book. It is the same Krishna book, this one, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then he was trying to impress him to buy the Krishna book. So that man, he was focused elsewhere. It was a bust of Srila Prabhupada's image. That means mostly up to the chest or up to the below the neck. So he suddenly, because when he was showing the book like this to sell, so the backside of the book was seen by that person. So Prabhupada's picture was there. He took a thread and started measuring Prabhupada's eyes, nose, ears, all these things. And then he was very surprised. After many minutes of measuring Prabhupada's facial features, immediately he came to the conclusion, in this person, all the four Sampradaya Acharyas are working through him to spread Krishna consciousness in this world. So that means Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarakacharya, then Vishnu Swami, Vallabhacharya, all of them working through Prabhupada to spread Krishna consciousness now, in the present times in Kali Yuga. And then he asked, could you get me a full-size picture of your Acharya? That means from his Shira, lotus head to the lotus feet. Then he had a photograph of Prabhupada from his lotus feet to his head. And then he started measuring. And then he said, now I am confirmed about it. So then he said, actually, you are very, very fortunate. I would desire, at least in my next life, I can join a movement like this. That means he knows he is not qualified to join Prabhupada's movement in this life. That means you can just imagine, it is such a rare thing to meet a Paramahamsa, a Mahabhagavata, Bhagavatottama, not easy to meet, to even come across. So maybe next life I would desire. Then this devotee said, but we are Vaishnavites, you are Shaivite. So why are you desiring to join our movement or movement like us? You're a Shaiva. So if you go to Shiva, what would you pray? He said, if I go to Lord Shiva, I would pray that I would join a movement like this to spread dharma. So that's what I would pray to Lord Shiva. Now you can just imagine, we are so fortunate that this life we are able to, contact Srila Prabhupada. So how much blessed and fortunate we are. So that is why I said, we should meditate on the glories of our Acharya. It's very important. As we meditate on chanting Hare Krishna, by hearing and chanting attentively, meditate on the deities, meditate on Srimad Bhagavatam, we should also meditate equally on the spiritual master and his glories and spread his glories. As we sing the early morning prayers, Ebe Jash Bushuk Tribhuvana. Actually, we are praying that if you see one of the stanzas says that we want an opportunity to think of the spiritual master at least 3 times a day and glorify the spiritual master. So preaching Krishna kindness also means preaching the glories of the Acharya. Krishna will be even more pleased by preaching the glories of the Acharya. So, so as I said, if Krishna has deputed the spiritual master, imagine how much selective he would have been. And that is Srila Prabhupada for everyone in this world today. So we have got a Bhagavatottama spiritual master. And however qualified one may be, materially or spiritually, the principle of accepting a spiritual master should be strictly adhered to. This is also Prabhupada makes a point elsewhere. Even if one is spiritually advanced and even liberated, still the principle of following this one's spiritual master should be adhered to under all circumstances. It is not that now we are conditioned souls, therefore we are following the Acharya. Once we become liberated and go back to Godhead, we don't have to follow the Acharya. No. Interestingly, Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, their eternally liberated souls, they are coming down to this world and seeking the spiritual master and setting the example. So obviously it behooves us that we have to accept the spiritual master. Prabhupada also made this point specifically, even if you're liberated, still the principle of following the spiritual master should be adhered. Even in spiritual world, Prabhupada will be our spiritual master. Bhakti Siddhanta is the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada. That is eternal truth. That is eternal truth. That's why the connection between the disciple and spiritual master is spiritual, not material. What does it mean by spiritual? It is a spiritual connection. Nothing to do with space dimension and time dimension. It is beyond space and time. The connection between one soul, the spirit soul, to the other spirit soul. So it is our fortune actually to be connected with such a glorious spiritual master. Just like you have a very qualified professor, so you take pride in that, right? In fact, you would seek guidance from such a great professor. In fact, you will be seeking if you don't have one. So we are fortunate, we already got that blessing to get the bona fide spiritual master. So only question remains whether we can follow him and rise up to his standard. So Prabhupada wants here that although Lord Ramachandra worshipped himself, because he is the Supreme Lord, there is nobody superior to him, we should not worship ourselves. We should worship the Supreme Lord. That is the standard being set by Lord Ramachandra. That is why we require an Acharya once again here. You can see how it becomes important to follow an Acharya. Because you will, there will be misreading the Shastra, including Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. There will be misreading. That's why you should read Prabhupada's translations and purports. Then you will never be misled. Sometimes there was an argument that we can read Shastra ourselves and we don't require an Acharya. Actually, that is not correct. We do require an Acharya even though books are there. But Prabhupada's books are a little special because these books are personal guidance and direction and instruction of Prabhupada, both theory and practicals. So if you read Prabhupada's books, translation and purports, you are getting personal guidance of the Acharya. So there was a misinterpretation in one of the translations of the Bhagavad Gita 4th chapter, verse number 34, that you don't require an Acharya, books are sufficient. That's not correct interpretation. In the case of Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's personal guidance is there. So books are actually sufficient. Reading Prabhupada's books is perfectly complete in going back to God. So it is not insufficient. Reading Prabhupada's books are perfect, and at the same time, we should also have devotee association, because Sadhu Sangha is part of Prabhupada's teachings, Krishna's teachings. Even Prabhupada's teachings you may misunderstand. You may read it wrongly with your filters, with your limited understanding, perception. That is another level of Maya. That I think I have understood Prabhupada's teachings correctly. That is also debatable and questionable. So that is why Sadhu Sangha is important. So Prabhupada said that you have to live amidst devotees. Why? Because even you may think this is what Prabhupada said, somebody may think this is what Prabhupada said. Therefore we have the Sadhu Sangha to clarify that. Prabhupada instituted Ishtagoshti. Why? To clarify this, so that our misgivings, misunderstandings can be cleared. There's another big danger that, okay, books, see, so that's why everything has to be understood in a very mature, sober way. All the teachings of the Vedas and the Acharyas. So when books are in, if we say, so I will read at my home Prabhupada's books, I will practice devotional service at my home. No. Whether you're reading of devotional principles and whether your application of devotional principles are perfect, who will certify? Can you get a degree yourself at home? Can you what do you say? Can you self-certify yourself that I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer? No. There is a university. They should confer the degree upon you and give the license to practice. So, we can't practice Krishna consciousness at home. No. You can practice Krishna consciousness at home, but under the guidance of the Acharya. And Acharya has made a system. So that is why it is required to practice devotional service in the association of devotees. Then those are more experienced devotees. That's why Prabhupada made the governing body committee. So Prabhupada said to take guidance of senior Vaishnavas. Then the temple presidents. So Prabhupada's just like a father is naturally concerned about his son, and he's concerned about his son, and he's more experienced than the son. So Prabhupada actually said the temple president is like the father of the devotees. Then GBC will be the grandfathers. So you no envying them. One should not envy them. So be very glad. Just like in a house, you are very happy to accept the guidance or correction of your father and grandfather. So that is how we have to see. And they are more experienced. So that is very important. Otherwise, even in GBC, Prabhupada made a system that all the Vaishnavas together consult and make decisions based on my teachings. So then the Acharyas and Krishna's will manifest through them. So that is why even if either in application of devotional service or in philosophical understanding, either way we may be wrong. Very, very important. And I'll be sticking on to that for a long number of years. That's why association is very beneficial, because which you may realize, then you may say, no, Prabhupada will guide me, because there's one statement by Prabhupada where the disciple constantly kept on asking Prabhupada, when you're no more there, who will guide me? Prabhupada said, my books are there, my lectures are there, and all these things. And Prabhupada said, but then if you want a specific guidance, Prabhupada said that depends on your purity. Whether I will directly talk to you. That depends on your purity. So that principle is there. Now devotees will catch the principle, okay, I'll go to Prabhupada, I'll pay to Prabhupada. No doubt that has to be practiced. But you may take 10 years, 20 years, by the time Prabhupada reveals you, Arey Baba, you are doing all the years, you have been practicing wrongly. But in the sadhu sangha, if you have been little more humble enough to follow the authorities, spiritual authorities, what would have taken 20 years for correcting your mistake, the very next day, if you go to that Prabhu, he would have told, he would have said 20 years. Such a shortcut, such a smart way. So why is Ramachandra accepting an Acharya? Why is Krishna accepting Sandipani Muni? Why is Lord Chaitanya accepting? To show us shortcut. The Prabhupada always said, if you have to research everything and find out everything in the world, is that the system of education? No. Approach a bona fide teacher who knows things as they are and learn from him the techniques of that particular subject. And the spiritual master is expert in the science of Krishna consciousness. Learn from him the techniques and the skills, the theory, the philosophy, the practicals, the nitty-gritty of the things from the spiritual master. You save time. Otherwise, you may not even come to the right path if you don't have a guru. You may not even come to the right path. But here we have the best of the things. Goloka standards straight away. Undebatable, unquestionable. Just got to accept it. That's all. All perfect standards. Just that our only prayer is to stick on, not to fall into Maya, and stick on to the Acharya and follow his system and his guidance. Otherwise, we'll make all these mistakes. Okay, the Lord is worshipping, I will also worship myself. Like that, so many readings will be there from the Shastra. So, I'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.